Training Peaks. But anyway, I'm happy to be here and talk about this first time race. I want to hear first. I'm going to jump in with Chad, who had an incredible day, 7:06. I mean, how in the world do you do that, my friend? And I want to talk about the course, and I want to talk about the event and what went on, and what you guys liked, and what you think could be fixed. Because every first Ironman race can have its difficulties. Chad, how are you? And congratulations. Oh, I let him in already. There you are. Yeah, that's okay. We've been through a lot of that today. So with me on the podcast is Andrew Dremak. Did I say that right, Andrew? Did I say that right, Dremak? Okay, and Coach Jill Bartholomew, who's been coaching triathletes for a while, and she is in fact a race finisher as well.
Yes, I am.
So, Chad, I think first thing I want to do is I want to get your feedback on the course and congratulate you on what an 7:06 is just on otherworldly. So you must have enjoyed the course.
Yeah, it was a great course. This was my 10th Ironman, so I've had a little bit of variety in terms of the courses that I've had the pleasure of doing thus far. And to be blunt, I mean, I thought Jacksonville was going to be a faster course than it was. Now, it's certainly a fast course, but I would kind of someone that's done, like a Ironman Texas. I think it was actually a harder day than a Texas course. I found even though the bike was fairly flat and fast, it was still very challenging and very exposed in the heat. And then the wind brought itself some new challenges as well. So all in all, I thought the race was very dynamic, a very honest course, across all three disciplines. I started the swim up at the front and, uh, was ironically was not downriver for us. I mean, I think we started with a bit of current going the opposite way. If anything, we had neutral current or current swimming against us because I'm normally a 51, 52-minute swimmer and swam a 55 there. So now, if you got in the water later, the current certainly started picking up and changing the other direction. So that was definitely, hopefully, a benefit for those entering the water a little bit later. But those that jumped in at 7:30 certainly did not reap the rewards of it, being a downriver swim. I do think this did suit the guys competing for overall though, because a lot of those guys seat themselves right in the front and ultimately gave me a kind of a leg up being a strong swimmer, at least from an overall perspective and getting on the bike in a good position leading the race. So yeah, I thought the swim was challenging. It also wasn't a straight swim, so we kind of had to navigate a little bit in terms of zigzagging and sighting the buoys properly, which I found pretty interesting. There was a nice kind of rowing boat that was leading the front swim, so I was kind of lucky enough. Hey, I'm just going to focus on them and cite that, but it was certainly a little bit challenging, and I'm curious to maybe hear from some other athletes that started further back with that dynamic of the current pushing you down, how that was with sighting the buoys and making sure you're taking a good line to the buoy. So overall, I thought the swim was very fair. The transition T1 was pretty straightforward, but fairly lengthy run into T1. The bike took a little bit, in terms of just getting out of town, but as soon as you cross over the bridge, just a very straightforward bike course. From someone that's riding, over in Los Angeles, I found the roads to be impeccable. I mean, great road conditions all throughout Jacksonville. The asphalt was fast, it was flat, very good rolling resistance across the course. But we had a quite a big headwind going out, and that I think zapped a lot of people's energy in terms of once they actually started that loop. So the headwind was fairly significant. I think about 10 miles per hour, nothing too bad, but definitely slowed you down. And then once you got to that loop, it really started heating up and there was just no cloud cover out there. So I found it to be, someone that's raced Kona twice now, very, very similar conditions to a Kona course in terms of the heat. And so Then doing the double loop, I found the first loop was very straightforward since I was kind of leading the race, didn't have anyone to really um, have to zigzag through or anything like that. Pedro and I were neck and neck. We were just kind of riding, together, and then the second loop started, and that's when I think there was a little bit of mayhem, but it's pretty typical on a loop course. You're passing other athletes, but at times, there was cars in the actual lane that we were riding, so they were a little bit impeding our progress. Where, hey, maybe I'm going 28 miles an hour. I need to slow down on the brakes, make sure this car sees me, pass it, and then carry on. So there were a few instances like that. But I would say for someone that's used to riding through a ton of traffic in Los Angeles, it was very much the norm in terms of what I'm used to riding. I just wanted to make sure that those drivers saw me coming and that I was being safe. And once I passed, we were able to carry on our way. So it wasn't too bad. I think the police overall did a good job of directing traffic. I think there was just a few nuances where cars were confused which lane they would be in, and they should have been in the left lane when they were in the right lane. So I would say that was maybe the one nuance with the bike course. And then as soon as we started kind of heading back on the second loop into town, mile 80, that's where I could see Pedro was struggling a little bit, and I had a little bit of a descent coming down a freeway overpass, so I put in a big effort to try to create a gap from Pedro, and lucky enough, finally kind of snapped the line and was able to do some damage riding home, back into T2. So overall, it was a great bike course. Certainly not as fast. I was hoping to ride like a 4:15 there. I think ended up riding right around a 4:23. So still a very fast course, but definitely very difficult in its own right. And I find these flat courses challenging in different ways. You're kind of just holding that aggressive aero position all day, where the only relief you got is when you're coming up those freeway overpasses. And every time I hit one, I was like, oh, yes, I can finally pop out of arrow and relax a little bit. So I think that was certainly a challenge. Um, then heading into the run, I mean, I love the run course. It was beautiful just out on the river walk. I just want to say, like, the community of Jacksonville really impressed me in just terms of how they showed up for this race. It was a great showcase of just community support and spectator support out there. I was able to kind of get a gap when I started the run and knew I was, had about a 3.5 minute gap on Pedro, which I knew how good of a runner he was. And so it was kind of like, hey, how long can I fend him off, or can I hold this the whole marathon? So I did a pretty good job, I think, through mile 1 through 20, and then the wheels started kind of falling off for me the last 10K with GI issues. Unfortunately, I just had to finally pop inside a porta potty at mile 23 of the race, and that's when he came by. So I was hoping once I cleared that I could catch up, but unfortunately, when I stopped running to go to use the restroom, my my legs just locked up, So for the listeners, sometimes in an Ironman, the best thing you can do is just keep moving. I think just sitting down for 45, 60 seconds is all my body needed to completely just lock up and start cramping. So at that point, it was kind of damage control. I was like, hey, maybe I can reel him in, but I'm just gonna do my best to hang on and fight till the end. So hats off to Pedro. I think he raced an incredible race. It's you know, I would say from a tactical execution point, I didn't know he was a former professional, but it doesn't surprise me. I mean, the guy was so tactical, sitting in on the swim, sitting in on the bike, conserving his energy to just run an impeccable marathon in the heat. So, hats off to him. I mean, just a great racer, great competitor, great sportsman. So, all in all, I love the course. I'm maybe interested in coming back next year, depending on how things go. I'm thinking about potentially taking my pro card, but USAT did change their qualification standard for US athletes this year. So although I've qualified in the past, I do need to punch my ticket in terms of getting my license again, and so that'll require definitely some more superior race performances in my near term.
Well, great. I'm gonna ask Jill and Andrew now both to give their feedback from the amateur perspective, age group coach, and it was Andrew's first Ironman. So it'll be interesting to hear overall and what you all think they can do better next year. What they did great. Obviously, you love the course, but what they did great and what you think they could fix for next year. I'd be really interested in hearing that. So I'm going to unmute you guys. Yeah. So
Hey.
give me
Well, first, Chad, congratulations. I remember you passing me on the run, and I was like, those two guys are smoking it. And I remember one of you was asking the guy on the bike what the gap was between you and the guy, I think it was you, between you and the guy in front of you, and was very unhappy with the answer. So that was my takeaway from the race, watching you go right past me.
Oh,
I thought it was a great race. I've done Texas, and I totally agree with what Chad said, like comparing it to Texas. I actually found it to be more challenging, just with the heat and managing the heat. It's like you go into Texas and like you expect a lot of things, and the aid stations are actually closer there than they were. They were 15 miles on this course. At Texas, they're 10, so like they're really prepared for it. And talking to the locals, it sounded like the heat was unexpectedly hot, and they weren't really quite prepared for it to be as bad as it was. I also started near the front. My start time was at 7:33, and I was expecting a nice current assist, and my swim ended up being pretty much exactly the same as a normal AM swim. It was like 109. So like not in the slow camp, not in the fast camp. On that, it felt like for me about halfway through, maybe it started picking up a little bit, but at the beginning, it felt like we were kind of swimming uphill a bit. Andrew, I don't know when you started, if you kind of felt the same. I heard that the later you started, the more assist you got.
So I was back and forth on if I wanted to wear a wetsuit or not. And then being my first one, I'm in no.
I think it's I think it's interesting when you talk about the zigzagging. I say you should. You obviously have never done Lake Placid where you're on everyone's swimming on that line all the way around, and if you're not a 115 or slower or faster swimmer, it's you get just swum over the entire swim. It's pretty interesting. What did you think of the bike course? So I'm going to ask you all that question. I'm going to go back. I'll start with Jill and Chad, and if you follow up, Andrew. I've been getting a lot of messages from people on the Jacksonville page, and it seems that a lot of the age groupers weren't crazy about the traffic on the bike course, and I'd like to hear. You know, you always have to remember that it's different from the 7 hour guy to the 16-hour guy, right? And the whole race experience is different. And so I'm kind of interested to hear what you think you guys could fix or suggest to fix that would just make the race even better than it was.
So I think I saw like 4 cars, and I ended up passing them. I didn't think it was a big deal, but I could see like as the day got later, I think the expectation to go into any road race, any cycling race of the roads being 100% closed. The only course I think I've ever raced on that was completely closed was Kona, right? And even that's not completely closed. The Queen K is like half open. What I saw was drivers not knowing how to behave around cyclists and being like very cautious. And I think that caution caused them to slow down because we're, one lane each direction. It's a double yellow road. In your head as a driver, you're like, I can't pass because I'm supposed to treat the cyclist as another vehicle. But the reality is like, yeah, you're allowed to pass bikes. Like you just have to do so safely. And that's what I didn't really see was like, cars passing when they could have. And as a result, you ended up having cyclists passing cars on their left, which I think made the problem worse, or people just getting very frustrated sitting behind the cars. It sounds like from the same Facebook pages, right? It sounds like communication was the problem. And there's a lot of like finger pointing going on right now, I think. But it just sounds like people weren't aware it was happening. And like we saw that they sent out flyers to everyone along the route. So how that could be is a mystery. But I think it's communication, right? In events like this. And it's the first time they did it. We have to expect growing pains. And I saw a lot of chat like locally of, residents going back and forth, like, saying things like, I was kind of against this because I sat in 3 hours of traffic, but then I saw that $10 million entered our economy and like, yeah, bring it back next year, please. So I think there's a little bit of that. Like we were inconvenienced, but now like they need to figure out like, was the inconvenience worth it?
So I did almost see someone get almost nicked. Well, from on that aspect, no. You also can't have a cop every 2 feet either. So, and honestly, the one guy that almost got nicked, it would have been 50-50.
Yeah.
Other than that, I didn't feel unsafe.
That's like one of the things we were talking about earlier was when you're on these courses, like it's really easy to get like really like, laser focused on what you're doing, but you're still on a public road and there's still dangers and people still do stupid stuff and you still need to be defensive. Like accidents happen, but some of what's out there is like if you're riding on cones, we've all been on courses where people drive across the cones because people do stupid stuff. So like you still have to be defensive.
Yeah, I've done 2 first-year Ironman. I lived in Boulder when when the town finally stopped fighting Ironman after 30 years and let them do a race there. And trust me, the people in Boulder were not happy about it. Boulder has some kind of triathlon or race every weekend, and they did not want Ironman in there at all. But finally Ironman negotiated a contract with them, and they had the race. And I have to say, you cannot believe how unsupportive the town was of the event. And and then the other one I did North Carolina when they took it over from beach to battleship, and just the opposite. The streets of Wilmington were just lined with people all day because they were used to beach to battleship. They'd had a race there, and and unfortunately it happened the day after the hurricane, and they had to cut the bike ride a little short. But I just think, and everyone says people, and we were talking earlier, Jill. Everyone says to people in Placid, a race I've done a couple of times, and I put camps on up there every summer, and the people downtown Lake Placid love the race because it is the largest revenue generating week of the year, and that includes ski season. But when you get down to the bottom of a Keene descent, you're down where there's no one making any money because there's no hotels down there, there's no restaurants down there, and by the time you get out into J, the crowd just gets a little bit angrier and angrier, and then there's no one. And I think that's one thing that in my opinion, as athletes, first of all, I totally agree with you guys. You go into a race focused. Who the heck cares what's going on with the town, right? You got to go into a race focused, and your eyes have to be in front of you the entire time. I just think it's important for us, the week leading up to the race and the days after the race when you stay in town, that we do more to support the town. I know I see some people, and again, I'm in Placid every year for the race, and I see some people just not acting really well, after the race is over, and that can upset people. And I think as a whole, I always tell my athletes when they get done with the race, make sure they walk around town to thank the people in the stores that were supportive of the race, and because you want to come back next year with a great attitude. Chad, anything you think you could fix?
Yeah, I do have a few thoughts. I mean, I think relative to Ironman start times, right? I thought we started maybe a little bit later than we could have, given, hey, it is a hotter race, right? Now, I do realize some of the intricacies with that, having to shuttle everyone up, right? And then a little bit earlier of a start time. So perhaps easier said than done. The other thing Ironman probably was thinking is looking at the tides and, making sure that it's not, an upriver swim. So that easily could have had something to do with it. But, right, starting things a little bit earlier could help with some of that heat management. Traffic control, I do think, right, could always be a little bit improved, but overall, I kind of had a similar experience with Coach Jill. I ran into like 2, 3 cars, had to go by them, wasn't too much of an issue in terms of them impeding my progress. But I was also lucky enough to have a police escort for, 60% of the race. So, my perspective is probably going to be a little bit different than other people's. But yeah, I think perhaps just making sure that those police are spread out a little bit more. I found on all the major intersections, though, there was traffic control. They were stopping cars. So, I did kind of feel safer making sure that I was keeping a steady speed through those intersections rather than being super defensive as I, racing to win. So for me, yeah, that does make a little bit of a difference whether to be on the gas or be a bit defensive. So I felt like the whole race, it allowed me to kind of race aggressively, but you're still always, slightly defensive, as Coach Jill said. Even in a close course, I think it's absolutely every rider should have their wits about you, should still have their head up, eyes on the road, because yeah, things can happen, and if you do have a quick lapse in judgment or focus, unfortunately, sometimes, catastrophic things can go awry. So, yeah, I fully align with Coach Jill on that remark. The other thing I did find interesting, and, I think this just being the inaugural race, I thought the volunteers were great, but maybe not as trained as volunteers in other races. So, for instance, every water bottle that I grabbed, nobody ran with me to hand that water bottle off. So, just as, again, someone racing at the front of a race, I would slow down from 28 to 25 miles an hour to 5 to 6 to make sure I got that water, because the first aid station I dropped it. And so that was one thing. The other thing on the bike course, I want to say of probably all the waters I grabbed, 60 to 80% of them were lukewarm to hot. They weren't cold. So when you're trying to use that water to cool your body down, or you're really overheating, unfortunately, when it's the last water you grab and it's a hot one, it is what it is. But there were a few instances there where I was like, oh, dang, like, if this was cold, that would have been really nice. But again, these are small things. The other thing that I found interesting, now, and Ironman maybe just do this, for the future for sanitary reasons. I'm not sure, but at every aid station on the run course, they had us getting our own ice. In the past, we've been given ice. Volunteers have helped us distribute ice, so they're helping us pour that down our neck or heads. In this race, there was a bucket at the end of each aid station, and you had to go and scoop your own ice. So I don't think it was an issue because everyone's dealing with the same thing, so it makes the playing field level. But it does slow you down when every aid station, I was taking 10 to 15 seconds to scoop ice because it was that hot. You needed to do that. But it was a nuance where of the 10 Ironmans I've done, first one where I kind of seen it laid out that way. So I don't know in the future if they can have cups of ice where volunteers are handing that to you, but I didn't see it as a big deal, but just something interesting. Outside of that, I think the course was really well organized, very well done. I don't know that I would have changed too much. It is interesting because I know Ironman previously had a different bike course going the other way. So, what was their reasoning for changing the bike course? Maybe would traffic control be better the other way? Would there be potentially more shade for athletes? Those sort of things. I don't know, as not, local to the area, but some things they could maybe look at. But personally, I love the course. I thought the volunteers were great. I thought the community was great. So there's not anything that particularly jumps out at me. It's just more like, how can we make sure that athletes are properly staying cool out there? Make sure that we're not getting maybe as many DNFs or right athletes having issues, medically, just being out in that hot sun as long as we are.
I think
Okay.
Yeah, I heard the same thing that the sheriffs were like, no, we're not doing that.
yeah, and one thing I've always found with Ironman, they fix things. Next year the things that we're a little unhappy with this year, or maybe we're a little distracting. They really look at it. It sounds to me like I'm a volunteer captain up in Placid every year. I run the street car crossings, and I know that up there they have a captain's meeting the day before the race, and then the captains meet with their people that day as well. So all the volunteers are on the same page and they know exactly what to do. And it sounds to me that probably is something that needs to happen down in Jacksonville, because I think proper hydration, getting the ice to you the right way, getting the cup handed to you when you're coming along the run, all those things are very, very intrinsic to having a great race. And people not ending up dehydrated or falling off their bike because they had to bend over to grab something off the table, or for someone who wasn't doing it. And that's a learning experience, right? I would imagine most of the people down in Jacksonville, um, when and I keep using plastic because it's such a great race and it's such an old time race, but uh, they probably, you know, they probably just didn't get all the training that they necessarily needed to have. You go to Placid, and there's people who volunteer there, like me, who volunteer there every year, and they know the course, they know what's going on, they know how to take care of the athletes. They're very endeared to making sure that they're all taken care of, and I think that's just a growth experience. Next year they'll get a little better, and then the next year they'll get a little bit better until everyone is finally tuned. What do you think, Jill?
I was thinking along very similar lines. The two things that I pulled out, so the ice, like, I don't know if that's a age group versus pro thing. I've seen it kind of go both ways. But on the bike course, I think at every aid station, I missed like the first 5 and dropped them before I caught one. And like most, you catch the first one that's handed to you, right? The other thing I noted was like the mix on the precision seemed off. I've done a lot of European races and it tasted really weird compared to what I'm used to. So I think like there's some maybe newness, people not being experienced. I don't know if it's like them not talking to each other yet, or maybe they just didn't know any better yet. I also heard with the, my husband was a volunteer with the bike catchers, and it sounded like they had some confusion there too on what to do and how to get the bike back to where it belongs. And there ended up being a few lost bikes I saw online.
Yeah, I know for volunteers up in Plaza, there's like a whole hierarchy. There's a whole chain of command for volunteers. There's these 2 women that are like the presidents of the volunteer committee, and then below them there's like their assistants, and then below them there's like the captains, and then there's the people who are just out there volunteering. And I think it pays huge dividends all over that course, because I don't know if any of you've done Placid, but the bike course gets out there. You now, especially the new course, you go out to the farmlands when you get down into J, and if the stuff isn't manned right, if people aren't doing it right, someone can end up in either seriously hurt or losing a lot of time off the race. Who else wants to say something? I'm not a great flat course guy. I'm a climber.
See,
I wasn't a fan of those last 2 bridges though. At the end of it.
See, that one at like 110, I had in the back of my head, I'm like, there's going to be people walking their bikes up that one.
I saw it.
Yeah, and I was like, I went super aggressive on gearing because it's a flat course. I usually do hilly courses, like this would be my 4th or 5th time at Lake Placid, doing Happy Valley in a couple weeks, and I'm like, oh, this is my 2nd time doing a flat course because I did Texas last year, and it's like it's fast, but they're almost harder because you never stop pedaling, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, that after so much flat, like the adjustment to jogging the bike up the hill is kind of like, oh, you have to actually like do some work now.
Yeah, you have to generate your own power.
Yeah.
For the entire race.
Can we talk about the run course?
Anyone else want to add anything? Chad?
No, I think I'm good if we want to jump to the run course, Joe.
Thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it. You had a fantastic day. What else can anyone say? And I wish you great success. Where are you off to next?
I'm doing 70.3 Omaha. It's actually a quick turnaround in 2.5 weeks. I have some family out in Nebraska. My dad grew up there, so for me, it's just special. Another inaugural race, but yeah, Nebraska's near and dear to my heart. Even though I'm a California boy, I'm a big Cornhusker and Big Red fan, so gonna be really excited to go out there, spend some time with family in Lincoln, and then jet down to Omaha. So it should be fun.
Well, I lived in Boulder for a long time, so I'm a Buff fan. So there's that difference, right? I can't, but it was always fun when Nebraska came to town. Okay, if no one else has anything to say, I really appreciate you all being on the show. I'll get this recorded and get it posted. But you want to talk about the run course? Yeah, that's the feedback I've heard from everyone that the run course was amazing.
That was hard. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I loved the loop at the back end. I'm like everywhere someone had had a hose out there. I'm like, here I am. It was so hot. It was like, you take every little, opportunity to celebrate and get cool. But
Yeah.
I didn't appreciate until after the fact how compact the run course actually was. Like for those of us with spectators, it was a fantastic run.
Anyone else?
I agree with Jill.
Go ahead.
I thought the run was great in terms of just spectators. That out and back was awesome. In terms of just getting cooling. There were so many spectators too that I kind of like knew after the first lap that just like continued to light a little bit of a fire under my butt. So, that now that Ironman prints your name out on your bib and everything, they were really great and just calling me by name and cheering super loud and, spraying me with hoses. They were also always nice with like, do you want to get sprayed before spraying you? I'm like, please. But yeah, it was fun. It kind of reminded me a little bit of Ali'i Drive in Kona, where everyone's just like out there having a good time, spraying each other with water, trying to stay cool. So the opportunity to do that 3 times was really fun, and that was definitely the highlight of the run for sure.
Yeah, I remember the first time I came out of the T2 and people were yelling, "Go Jeff!" And I was like, "How the heck do they know who I am?" Because I'd never looked at my bib. I went, "Oh, okay." I thought I was special for about 200 yards. All righty, guys. Well, I'll have this posted various places after it gets recorded and edited a little bit. And does anyone have any questions for me? You what? Oh no, it's good to have a first timer on always. So anyway, I'll post my website is prs-fit.com. Anyone ever has any questions, and especially on the Jacksonville page, if you're on the Jacksonville page, Chris Kaplanis is a really, really good guy. He's a fellow coach, and we both admin the Lake Placid page together. And we're the kind of coaches. If you ask us a question, we'll get you an answer. It's not hire me or we'll answer you. We're all about making sure that everyone's getting the great experience and the great knowledge base that they can get, so they can become great triathletes. So anyway, that's it. Jill, it was a real pleasure meeting you. I'm happy you came on. Chad, a real pleasure meeting you. Andrew, I don't know so much. No, I'm just kidding. But it's a pleasure meeting you as well. I hope everyone has a great night. Again, thanks for being on. And as always, be healthy, train smart, and have fun.
Thank you.